I read these, Mike?
What's that?
Can I read these?
You open up for public comment, is there any public comment?
I have one.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm here to set the record straight. I may not change your opinion, but that is okay, because I know what kind of person my husband really is. This is over. A couple of weeks ago, you regurgitated old news regarding Tim. That's a good description, because people keep throwing up old news, which is all they have. You brought up the Matthew Shepard story. It is a horrifying story. But here's the rest of the story. The Facebook exchange you brought up was over 10 years after Matthew was killed. Tim does not live in the past, so he had no idea or recollection that is what Dennis Scranton was referring to. You failed to mention that he apologized for that debacle numerous times. You also failed to mention the rest of the story. Investigative journalist Stephen Jimenez spent 13 years interviewing more than 100 people with a connection to the case. To sum it up, Matthew was also into drugs and knew the two young men who murdered him. Stephen reported Matthew was addicted to and dealing crystal meth and had dabbled in heroin. He also took significant sexual risks and was being pimped alongside Aaron McKinney, one of his killers, whom he had occasional sexual encounters with. In regard to the rape and violence allegation, from the article you used as evidence, that is Martin Kidston's words. Tim's Facebook page reads, and I quote, "Here is the lead tyrant in Missoula that wants your guns and wishes to throw unknown refugees onto the streets of Montana. She accuses those that seek transparency and accountability of hate and fear-mongers. She needs your help, God." So you condemned Tim for the derogatory comments by others made regarding the city council member. I also know that you are the type that needs to be in control. That has been apparent for the last 6 years you have been commissioner. You fought with Commissioner Slifka constantly and degraded him whenever he questioned your actions or did not go along with you. You sat in your seat and showed contempt for him. In my opinion, not very professional. You were sued by Commissioner Slifka for breaking open meeting laws, and yet you still sit here continuing to do the same thing. I guess that's because no one else questions you? Why not? There were two long-standing employees who were in their jobs long before you were ever elected, and they have been fired since you came on board. I know they were not incompetent, but you found reasons to dismiss them and got at least one other commissioner to go along with you. Why? I wish I knew. From 2015 to 2018, a new tax showed up on my bill, economic development. It has been as low as 0.06 mils and as high as 0.33. I'm not sure what all that entails, but I'm willing to bet that some of that money, if not all, went to MVAC. And then you have the gall to say, because you make a disclosure, you don't have a conflict of interest? I disagree. When you make motions and vote on issues that involve the entity your husband works for, that is a conflict of interest. On that note, when you were questioned about that during one of the candidate forums, you stated you would recuse yourself from voting. Yet you are on record as making motions to give thousands of dollars to MVAC. You argue with the county attorney and tell him he is wrong when he tries to give you sound advice. I gather you went to law school as well. You are a typical politician. You tell people what you think they want to hear and what you think they need to hear. You are not upfront and honest. Tim is that. Whether you like it or not, he will tell it how it is. He doesn't try to paint the rosy picture or the feel-good story. For that, he is condemned. And I'm not very impressed with the other two that sit there next to you because they seem to go along to get along. Why is that? And I'll give you a few minutes to contemplate, and then when I leave, you can do your rebuttal. Thank you.
Actually, if you want to stay, Chris, I did cite credible articles. I'm not going to rehash any of that. It was a rebuttal to a question from Tim to be placed on a county board. And to everything you said, you are absolutely entitled to your own opinion, but I think it's horrific to muddy the name of a murder victim who's not here to defend himself. That is
It
below
is,
the
and
belt.
it's horrific to make him a victim when he
That's all I have to
wasn't,
say.
when he wasn't all that innocent.
Any other public comment? Okay, let's see, we'll move on to the silo season plan, CDBG letter. Do we need to approve this plan, is that what we need to do?
That was brought up by BOR at the meeting we had at the silos. We do it every year, and it's just an update. The CDBG letter, that, we don't have anything there. I misread an email, and so I just emailed everything he was asking for.
So what involvement does our conservation district have out there?
I don't think any.
Nothing?
I've
Okay.
never,
Okay,
I've never seen anything in their minutes or agenda regarding the silos and
Okay.
never been contacted.
okay,
But something could come up, I just don't know.
all right. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask Al a question if I could, please.
Certainly.
Al, so you're here. I guess I'm looking that you guys are you guys working on like fundraising to match a donation by BOR, is that?
Yes, sir. We now have our fundraising letter written and everybody on the group has reviewed it. They have it in their hands and we're starting to get out to use it. So we'll be making appointments with community groups and all that kind of stuff, outreaching. The grant world is pretty tight on planning grants, but yes, we are beginning to launch that. As you well know, we have to have that in hand by the 1st of October, so they'll transfer that funds to you guys.
Gotcha. All right, great, thanks.
Could the citizens group get a copy of that letter when you sign it? Thank you.
Is BOR's donation of $445,000, is that, do you have to match the entire amount, or?
The initial discussion we have had is that, yes, if we do not match the full 45, they can match whatever we have. But yeah, that's been the discussion so far is 50% match.
Okay.
Yeah.
motion to approve the, work plan for 2019 Saddles Recreation Area.
I'd be happy to make that motion if you guys don't have any questions.
Yeah, no,
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Any questions?
Mr. Chairman?
The vote? Yes, sir, Tim?
Just real quick, sir. The CBDG grant, I guess I may have missed what you're speaking of there. How much is this grant? And is it already applied? Or is it, I'm just trying to get a handle on where it's at. I understand it's a BOR program for planning. I guess if you wouldn't mind, maybe give a quick summary of what we're talking about here, because it's again, it really doesn't give much of a clue.
So the CDBG grant was not part of this?
No, the CDBG grant has been on the agenda a dozen times, give or take. And that is for an update to the county growth policy, which,
Okay, so it's the same
and the
one.
CIP,
Okay.
which is the capital
Continuation of
improvement
that.
plan, and the floodplain. This 45,000 that we're talking about with Al is money that BOR put up with a one-to-one agreement with the Citizens Advisory Group in order to implement the master plan and put it together into an engineered plan with phases.
Thank you for the explanation or clarification.
Could take a vote, all in favor of approving the work plan for 2019?
Aye.
Opposed, same, motion carries.
If we could sign two, we could give Al one right now
Okay.
for his group. Thank you. Thanks, Ellen.
Okay, so we'll move on to the 10,
Excuse me,
15.
Mr. Chairman, one more
Yes.
follow-up question if I could. Al, maybe, don't want to be out of order here. If you're going to be coming up with the match for the 45,000 grant, is that coming out of the Canyon Ferry Trust or is that coming from some other source?
Well, we're gonna be looking at whatever sources we can work with.
Nothing in progress at this point?
No.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Move on to our 10-15 Trust Board fiscal year 2020 budget submission bylaws update, adopt a grant and project standards.
We are ready, sir. We put the budget, which you have the packet. It's on the first page, and what we did is we hit the budget items, and the one that might catch your eye, and we did this intentionally so that the whole of the trust is available, because we had some problems in the past where we tried to budget, and we got to a point where we couldn't pay on some of the grants until we went through a budget adjusting process. So that's the reason we presented it in this form. Okay? Doesn't mean we have to spend it, it's just it's available. Okay?
Are you, your professional services and your contract services, do you have major projects coming up that you're budgeting that for, or you're just giving yourself some leeway there?
We give us some space.
Okay,
Doesn't mean we're gonna spend it, but in the event we have a situation come up, we have enough space to take care of it without adjusting the budget.
okay,
We do have the ongoing Bureau Rec requirement on the leases with the golf course and Rod and Gun. And we've hired an attorney and we haven't gotten the bills. I think we've gotten one bill on that, but we
okay.
anticipate some coming in.
Mr. Chair, if I may, can we get an update on that process? I understand he was hired to redo the concessionaire contracts with the different groups. How's that coming? Is it close to done?
Oh, by leaps and bounds. I'm not sure, Virgil gave us a pretty good update on Rod and Gun, and maybe you can elaborate on that. Golf course, I think we're pretty close with them. Virgil, you want to mention the Rod and Gun?
Yeah, we've had 2 meetings with the attorney Peter, and the first was just to get a draft started, and then that was presented, and there was some adjustments to that one, and he come to the gun club by our last meeting and presented the draft he had at the point, and we're prepared to adjust a little bit on that one and go ahead, and then he found some more information somewhere, so he's back to redrafting, and we should have a document in July that meets the needs of the Park Service, where we have to deal with them in this concessionaires agreement, plus some of the others. For your information, the issue that has surfaced that will be the biggest for the gun club is we have 2 entities now. We have the lease at Indian Creek, which is a standard real estate lease, and this one coming up is a little bit different. And at the moment, we're not sure how the insurance is gonna work. We may have to have 2 policies instead of 1. And once we get the final document we signed, then we'll approach the insurance companies to see how they wanna handle it, whether it's in 2 policies or whether they can write it so one will do the job for both. So that's where that stands at the moment.
Thank you.
And the golf course had their board meeting, I believe, last week, so I should hear, I think they communicated directly with Peter Simon. So I should hear back from them this week about any changes.
All right, thank you. And the softball club, are you guys,
Doesn't exist.
all right? Thank you.
So Virgil, is this $876,000, is this what's available?
That would be available, yes, sir.
Okay,
So if you had a project that covered the whole thing, the funds would be available to start the project or whatever happened. And so, to go back, as far as developing budgets, we did this in the past, and we didn't leave enough available cash. And one of the projects grew a little bit, and we couldn't pay on it until we went back to the commission for a budget adjustment. So that's the reason we do it this way.
Is the thought behind the $3,000 for publicity the same? You just wanted to have a chunk of money in there just in case?
We do our monthly advertising for our meeting, and we pay a fee for that. What we had in mind there, and with that larger amount, is if we need to hold hearings for a project. If, let's say, the new plan, the survey that came out, they're talking about a building and improvements to fairgrounds. So as that study goes on, we say, okay, we can cover those two items by a nice building at the fairgrounds. That's gonna require a public hearing, because it's gonna be a massive thing. So we thought we'd put some money in for a facilitator for that meeting, so. And then lots of advertising for that, so. So that's kind of what we had in mind. So it's a bit of overkill, but we didn't want to come in for a budget amendment for it, so.
And the professional services at $15,000, what's the thought there?
Oh, gosh, and then we've got two there. We've got professional services and contracted services. Professional services, I think, is attorney.
And tax preparation,
Yeah.
which is minor, but that we always pay, I think it's, I don't know, 700 or something.
And then $25,000 for contracted services, also attorney?
Depends on the situation. That one, I don't think we considered that attorney. I think that's if we needed to hire surveyors or, I guess, research, not necessarily attorney. One nice thing with the way we're set up, as major things come in, we bring it to the commission regardless. I mean, we pay our monthly bills without bringing those in, our minor stuff, but we get anything big, we're gonna bring it in for approval. So you guys get a double hit at it, so.
And the machinery and equipment for $1,000.
Years ago, we bought Debbie a computer, and of course it's outdated and died and went away. And so we went to her and said, what do you want to do? And she has her own now and does not charge us for that. But she's got a printer that's on the blink. So we've been postponed a number of times because she's got 2 junk printers and some of my old office printers, and you might need to update her printer.
Excuse me.
So that's what we have in mind there.
And the contract, I would add, contract services would also include anything in the future for 2020, for Mia Whitfield, for grant writing.
Yeah, good point. And Mia, she works relatively inexpensively, matter of fact, for her services, quite inexpensively, but when she, at the summation of a contract like the Bureau Rec, she's got a bonus written into her contract, so when she completes one and scores and we get some free land, we give her a bonus, so. It's still a stipend, it's not.
And it's set, it's a set amount.
It's a set amount, yep.
It's not at our discretion, or your discretion.
Thank you.
I had a question for you. As far as the revenue side for the trust board, this is all expenditures, obviously. Right now, we're not expecting to take anything out of First Premier, but depending on the market and the grants. So do we need to submit anything? That would totally be a shot in the dark.
No,
Okay.
your revenues are kind of set by, well, are certainly set by the corpus, or
Right.
what's on
Right.
top of the corpus, so, no.
Okay. That's what I thought, I just wanted to make sure.
Is this 876 that you've got here, that's not affected by the market anymore, that's already pulled out?
That's on our cash account here.
Okay.
We'll need to work with our finance officer on this, but she may not, and the auditor may have some opinions about putting that full amount in here. But to Virgil's comments, as long as you have more than zero in a particular line item, you actually can spend. If we give you our blessing on a grant, for example, and you don't have quite enough money in there, we can still award that. You can still pay the check to whoever that entity is, and then the amendment process is done after. So it shouldn't preclude anybody from getting their project funded if you do put, again, the $100,000 in there. It would, I'm guessing the auditor's gonna say something about checks and balance on that. But we'll check with Debbie and see what she says and what her opinion is on all that. And we've checked with her on all the budgets, it's not just yours.
Any further questions on the budget then?
Not for me.
If not, we'll move on to the bylaws update.
I emailed you the bylaws, so this is the whole with the attachments.
Fantastic, thank you. Just a quick question before we start. Did Tom Budowitz write these up years ago when this first started?
Yes, years and
Okay,
years
so-
ago, and we've modified them pretty substantially. Nothing that would change the legal parameters of it, as the wording will say in there, but you know, at the period of time when we wrote those up, our primary consideration was the lake. That was that's what we used as a flogging tool in DC to get some funding. Most of the lakes in Broadwater County, and yet we don't get any of the funding, so.
That was quite a coup.
Yeah,
You did good.
but Tom, yeah, he used them a lot at that period of time.
I don't know why, but I could hear Tom's voice.
Yeah.
He knows.
Yeah. He flew to DC, as did Virgil, at just cost. No fees, no, nothing, just a cost. So we flew he and his daughter back, so that was the only perk he received is hotel rooms and flights. Virgil too, so. I think Virgil went by himself though.
Yeah, I did. The only comfort part was it was first class out and back, and that really helped.
Don't get used to it.
So the rewrite of these used that original set of bylaws. It took the example that you had in the package when you had all the boards meet. We took that outline and meshed the two of them together. So there's a lot in the outline that's changed from a heading, wording standpoint, numbering, all that kind of stuff. The layout more matches the stuff that you had. But a lot of the wording is still that, but it's updated for, you know, what's gone on in the past, almost 20, 15 years since the original bylaws.
Thank you.
In that packet that I handed out, you will also see the grant application is in here, the
Okay.
revised grant application. These bylaws and the grant application, and anything in here that didn't come from you guys. The Broadwater County Trust goals and standards, I guess that's it, everything else is from you. The spending is all, has been approved by the trust board.
Okay.
What we would like is to have you folks review the information that's in here, the bylaws, as well as the new grant application. And if there's some changes or additions you wish to include, send them back to us and we'll make the adjustments And hopefully by that time, we have a final draft which we all can sign and move forward.
If we could, and following up on that, if we could get the grant application, if you review that ASAP and approve that one, that would allow us to hand that one out. It's a cleaner, more abbreviated, better copy for them, for the public.
Yeah, we discovered we need to have a little better tracking process, and that's included in there.
We followed your lead on that. We didn't take this lightly. I bet we have 4 months in this, so.
Thank you.
And we have, I think, 4 working meetings to get it this far.
And a case of paper.
Copy paper.
The other thing you'll notice in there is on your signature page or the page after that, all the attachments. We felt that it was important that direction that you as commissioners give the boards, we wanted that attached to our bylaws, because as we make people aware of the bylaws, that information is attached, but it's not amended in, it's an attachment, so that if you change it, we just change it. We don't have to go back through and change the bylaws. But it has it all present, so that anybody can pick that package up and go, okay, here's the bylaws, and here's the commission's direction for the board as to how we do things, so that's why that's in there that way.
Well done. Debbie, the packet you just handed us, the bylaws are the same as the ones you emailed us, right? Okay.
Yes.
All right, I didn't have any questions on the bylaws.
I didn't have any questions.
I do like that with the amendments, I think that's well done.
So we want to approve these bylaws, or do we want to take some time to review them?
I guess I'd still like to have a little bit of time to look through them.
Okay.
That's fine with me.
So we will take a look at these and get back with you on the grant proposal for sure. We'll try to get that taken care of for you, get back to you with any changes we might have. When do you guys have another meeting?
July 8th or 9th? Don't have a calendar in front of me. Whatever that Tuesday is.
9th?
I do have some questions on the application though.
Okay,
Want me to jump in?
yes.
Okay, so, on the application, what you guys included, in the single-page sheet, that actually answers a lot of my, questions on the application. Policy for grant application, I think that's excellent.
Which page are you on?
I'm on the single page that was in Debbie's packet, and it's got the, trust board goals and standards right here at the top. So as I understand it, this would be included for anybody who requests an application, they would be getting this. Okay, good. It clarifies a lot. So a couple of questions then, that I had in the application. Some of these we don't even have to talk about because they're on this sheet, but I do think it would be, less confusing for an applicant to have these general guidelines actually mirror your standards right here. That are, these are kind of the same, but they're a little bit more confusing than the single sheet. Does that make sense? I can give you an example if you want. You look
Okay.
confused, Steve. So,
Please.
the first paragraph under general grant guidelines says the very
Your
last.
I'm sorry, Laura, your page 2 of the grant application itself.
Yes, yes. So it says the higher the match amount percentage, the more beneficial. An applicant applying for the grant doesn't know if a match is required. What does beneficial mean? Does it help them? Would 25% help them more than 10? What you have in the goals and standards is a little bit more clear. Recommendations from the county recreation board on the priority of the grant, a matching fund, number 3, from grant application is recommended. This matching can be in the order of donations of time, material, and use of construction equipment. A little bit more specificity might be good if that does weigh in the decision. If it doesn't weigh in the decision, then maybe a sentence that it doesn't weigh in the decision would help clarify that. So if that is something that you do consider, let the applicant know, would be my thought, in a way that's clear.
Does the sentence on the grant application above the one that you highlighted, while BCTV does not have a mandatory match requirement, like to see 30% match or more?
And what's not clear there is likes to see. So if it's 30% or more, do they get an extra couple of points? Do they get stronger consideration? If it's 25 instead of 30, what does that mean for the applicant? Some of those things.
We shied away from the point system, and we discussed.
And that's fine, but it's not clear here, point system or not. What I'm getting at is the lack of clarity of, do they have to have a 30%? Can they have 25? That's what I'm getting at for the clarity questions, not really the points, but does it matter to the applicant if they're not at 30? If it does, how does it? Does that make sense?
It does, but we tried to leave ourselves some wiggle room on that. And we discussed that if it's a project that we thought had substantial public benefit and they could only come up with 10%, we thought if our board thought it merited approval, we would. That's why we left that very vague and floating. So if it's not a very good project and they come up with 30%, maybe it's not as good as one that comes up with 10. So we're trying to be vague there. We're trying not to paint ourselves into, oh, we came up with 30%, so we get 2 more pegs on the chart than somebody else. We're not trying to do that. We're trying to leave it to our discretion, then we'll submit to your discretion.
And for the applicant, maybe if you put that sentence in there, you know, if, just exactly what you
We can try to
said.
word that.
Yeah, I think that would be beneficial, just thinking about, a person who's gonna put the time into applying needs to know, you know, who's eligible, what projects are eligible, what the scoring criteria is. Yeah, it's not a point system, but what you just said, include that so that they know, is my only thinking on that. It's very, very clear, again, in the goals and standards, where it says in the event the grant application requires construction of buildings and other construction, the proposed must be signed off by a licensed engineer or architect. It's, I would suggest just shifting that language. The language in the application itself states that every project needs to license, engineer, design, and approve site plans. So I would just take this, because this is really clear, and just shift it over. Because I think that would, if confused me, yeah, I think it would confuse an applicant. The next paragraph that starts, project grant proposal must be submitted to the secretary 2 weeks prior to the established meeting. I would suggest a date certain and simpler for applicants, by the 1st of the month, for example, by the 25th of the month, whatever day it is, so that they have a clear understanding, because not everybody knows when you guys meet. So I think it would just be more clear for the public, if that's doable.
I missed the first part of that.
Oh, I just
Yeah.
suggested that a date versus 2 weeks before when your meeting is. Not everybody knows when your meeting is. A person who's immersed in, whatever their passion is, and they're working, and they're raising a family, and they're volunteering for the community, isn't tracking when the trust board meets. So to say 2 weeks before is vague. I would suggest by the 1st of the month. That way, it's solid for everybody. They can grasp that. It's easy to understand, and they don't have to do any research to figure out when that next meeting is.
So what we were trying to do with that was, if, a couple things. One is, it doesn't work if somebody walks into the meeting and gives us an application. They're automatically deferred, at least for a decision, until the next meeting. But in between time, if somebody was to bring a proposal in, we felt we wanted enough lead time to be able to review that, do our due diligence on that before we got to the meeting. And we felt 2 weeks was adequate, but we realize it's so short, but we try and make that work. If we go to the 1st of the month, just like in July, our meeting's the 9th, we got basically a week.
And like I
And-
said, pick the 25th. I just picked a number out of the air, but what I'm saying is, for the applicant, for the citizen, it's more clear for them to have a number than 2 weeks before your meeting. They don't know when your meeting is. Who do they call? Who's the chair of that board? I don't even know who the secretary is. Those are the questions that they have, because they are not immersed in what you guys are doing. They're immersed in their own lives. So if you said the 25th or the 15th, whatever date you guys want to choose, if you make it a number, it's easier on the public who's applying for the grant, is all I'm saying. It's just a suggestion. If you guys don't want to follow it, it's still my suggestion, but, I'm one of 3, so. So yeah, if you guys want to hash that around, but no, I just picked the 1st of the year. You can pick any number.
What we're trying to do is to keep from adding a month sometimes on an application, because generally we get feelers or people ask for some information, and those are what serious, so we can try to get them lined up in the process so we don't add another month. And this was one of the conditions that we tried to figure. So if we go to the 1st of the month and say some group come in, say on the 13th or something after our meeting, then that's gonna sit there for 3 weeks until the next meeting. So the idea there was to try to shorten the period for the application people, so that they would, if they got it in on time, then we wouldn't have that delay in the process of examining the application. So that was one of the reasons we looked at.
Yeah, I think it's well reasoned, yeah.
It also
and then-
allows us time to get a feel for the public, what the public has in mind. And then when they come in to present the app, we can ask better questions.
Now, one of the problems that we've had over the years is timing on the grants so that it fits into a construction, so they can get the funds to do whatever is during the construction season, which, sometimes, particularly stuff on the outside, we have about 6 or 7 months that it's comfortable enough to get things done. After that, it starts to drag depending on the weather. So we try to get the outside constructions, if the grant application group wants that, then we try to get them started early enough, either in the fall or in the spring, so they go through, that they can work in the outdoor construction period, don't do the weather this time. So we've, over the years, tried to figure out schemes to keep the process moving forward, so they don't lose a lot of time during, miss a season of construction.
Makes good sense, I think we're on the same page.
I think you guys are
With the
talking about
intent.
the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it really are,
Yeah.
just a little different language, and Debbie, my question is most likely people are gonna come pick up this application from you,
Yeah, I get the phone calls or the emails
Mhm.
or,
yeah.
um,
And I guess I'm thinking if it was me asking for a grant, I'd know when the board meets and I'd know who the members are.
Right.
So,
Would it be acceptable to the trust board and the commissioners if amongst ourselves, we email or whatever this week, these changes, I get this back to you Monday, next Monday, and review it?
I'd like it before the meeting,
Yeah.
by Friday, if that's good, so we can make sure that,
Because they're pretty
Posted?
minor, but I
yeah,
would really like this, at least this part officially approved. Because I haven't got very many calls lately, but if I do, we're still giving the old grant application. So, okay, we'll email the trust board, I'll get back to you by Friday.
and I do have just a few
Oh,
more.
sorry.
The next paragraph, it says, and starts with grant applicant sponsors. I would like to request that anybody who fills out an application get a response in writing. If the answer is no, tell them why, and maybe direct them to another source if there is another source. Just so that people know what their status is.
We struggled with the
This email phone call.
no and why. And it comes down to if it's really a crackpot idea, how do you write that up?
Just like you said it.
Yeah, that's not politically correct.
Mr. Chairman.
If it really doesn't fit and is absolutely insane, that letter of why becomes very difficult. So,
It does, and I totally get that. I think it's a show of respect for someone who put in the time. And there's ways you can word something that's really tough like that, even if it's a very benign sentence because of something is so awful. I still think they deserve the respect of a response. That's my
you
own
might
thinking.
reach in your political journals and get us some of those canned statements that we can hide behind, that would certainly be fine. That's, we struggle with being.
And I don't think
politically
anybody
correct.
wants to hide behind anything. But I think it's a show of respect. If somebody puts in the time to write out an application, let's at least give them a response. Because we get those people at the next step and they're lost. They don't know what happened, they don't know why they didn't get it. So it would help them and save them time and save credibility, if they at least had a reason.
I think probably a classic example of that is, well, of course, you got the silos thing. And we explained, at the silos, the wheelchair thing, we explained to them at the time. So they didn't get blindsided at all.
And there was no vote.
Yeah, there was no vote, and we said that's inappropriate. Let's go back to, I'm thinking even the last couple of years, playground equipment, we don't turn down a lot. Playground equipment, we turned it down. There was so many mixed emotions on whether it needed to be replaced, and the whole emphasis was on brand-new playground equipment. The problem was, it was a flooding area. And their solution is just put a drain in and dump it on the street. That's not a solution. That dumps it into the borrow pit on the main street, and we kept, I think that one came back probably 3 times and could not get clarification. So it was kind of multifaceted on how we would write a denial on that. But we struggled with that one.
And I know that it can be tough. I know what I'm asking is not easy. there's a number of different examples, we can go back and forth again, I'm not going to. What I am gonna say is, I think it's a show of respect, and I think our citizens deserve that at the very least. Again, if you guys decide that you just don't wanna do that, and it comes back to this board and it's a 3-2 vote, or a 2-1 vote, I can live with that. But I am gonna sit on, I think there needs to be a process where every applicant is replied to, and they're informed why they didn't get a grant. They put in the time, so
Point-
it's
point
just my
Email or
opinion,
phone call or letter.
and I'll let you guys hash that out.
Okay.
Number 8, on page 4, who will operate and maintain this project when completed? If it's on somebody else's property, that should include maybe a support letter or something in writing that the owner of that property is aware and is in agreement. Simple typo on number 7, on the last full line, you need the second set of brackets after designs. And then number 9, it says, who will provide future maintenance and management plan? I would say change that to what is the future maintenance and management plan? And if you are not going to fund maintenance, I would suggest putting it here in the goals and standards so that people know. And I would ask for photos in number 11, instead of is appreciated, maybe how about is required? Show us what you've done, because you guys should have a brag board, or you have a website coming. You should have photos on your website that say, hey, this is what we do for you. And then I would probably say on the last line, Debbie Randolph, Finance Officer. Maybe put contract there, because we do have a county finance officer, and I think that would be confusing for folks.
Yeah.
That's all I've got.
Can you go back to, I'm sorry, I missed it. Number 8, you said, oh, who will operate and maintain this project when completed?
Yeah.
What did you want in there? I'm sorry.
I think that whoever owns the property
Oh.
should have documentation for you guys that they're, 1, aware, and 2, in agreement of what's being planned for their property.
Okay, so on the previous page, on page 3, there is an item in there that says specifically, the project is on land not owned by the sponsor, private or public. Include letters of support from the landowner and copies of leases or easements
Perfect,
authorizing access to the project. So it's
perfect.
it's
That
there
covers
as a
it.
check off,
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
That got in there from experience in the past where it was a little, not absolutely clear as to who was responsible for the property. So that was where we really had to start tightening things up, because some of these grants are gonna come in for work to be done on other public land. And this is where you really need to have cooperation from whatever agency you're dealing with. So this, there's opportunities for this trust money to go in varied directions. And the issue is to make sure that it goes on, first of all, public land, and if it goes on private land, then everybody needs to understand very clearly how that works. So we tried to keep this, so all this money is spent on some property that belongs to some government entity.
Yeah. It's a very good application, and I think you've already addressed some of the issues, so it's well done. I tried to read it from more of the mindset of the applicant than of somebody who, is immersed again in this, and certainly not to the degree you guys are, but we have our own immersion, and the public doesn't have either one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And and just that whole guidelines page is there for that exact reason, was that so applicants knew what the process was gonna be and how they were gonna be handled in that process, so that's why that's there, that's new, that one.
the goals and standards, this is excellent.
The goals and
Very
standards
clear.
and the application guidelines page wasn't, there wasn't one before, so.
That's so much cleaner.
That helps, yeah. Yeah,
I'll get the revisions to you by Friday.
thank you very much. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Do you generally have, the people that apply for these grants, do they generally come to a meeting prior to even applying for the grant to get a general feel of what's going on?
Almost always, yeah.
If
Okay,
they're really interested,
Yeah.
they're paying attention.
okay. It would seem to me it'd be a lot easier to come to a meeting and ask questions before you go through the whole process of filling out this grant.
You guys have done a lot of work, I appreciate it. Clarified a lot of things.
I don't have any, we got anything?
Well, good work, you guys.
Okay, so we will get those changes to us, and then we'll get it back on the agenda for next week.
For Mike.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we will move on to our 10:30 Hospital District Board fiscal year 2020 budget submission.
Good morning, all.
Good morning.
Well, we're kind of hoping that we won't have to ask you for any money at all. Wouldn't that be a pleasant surprise? As you all know, the hospital is, we're negotiating for somebody to take it over, and so if that happens, we won't be responsible for maintenance, and so we wouldn't need any money at all. Now, we've got here a budget, we're asking for the maximum amount of mills allowed by law, with the understanding that if we don't need it, we'll just give it back here. You don't have to give it to us to start with. I'll go over it with you. It's very simple. Debbie, would you like talking? Sure. I think we're very likely to reach an understanding with some healthcare organization. I'm not sure which one. There are several that are interested. But I think if it does happen, it's going to happen fairly soon. I would imagine probably would close within a couple of months. And we should have a much better idea within just a couple of weeks, maybe, of what is likely to happen. Now we have a carryover on there, as you see on page 2. How I did that. I did it the same way as last year. We start with a carryover that we're expecting. Actually, that money, that amount will probably go down substantially. We have some bills from the Broadwater Health Center. We're responsible for maintaining that building. And they've put, I think it's about $15,000 worth of bills for the mostly for air conditioning and heating, and and some for the generator out there. So that 104 will probably go down substantially could be right away. And you see we were asking for the maximum number of mills, would be about $33,000. So anyway, we'd end up with reserve, if everything goes right, we didn't pay any bills, with about $135,000 reserved for the maintenance and repair. I don't think that that's going to be anywhere near that much money we'll end up with. And I don't know how you do budgeting when we say we might not need it at all. Do you budget for it and then just keep it, and if we don't need it, fine. We look at the district as, we don't want to dissolve the district if a deal goes through, because it might come up that doesn't work out, and in the end we want to have the district be able to come in and say, well, we have to reactivate again. So I would guess that we just kind of go in a dormant state and have one annual meeting or something, just to keep it in existence. Because to form a hospital district is quite a process. It has to go through a vote, you gotta get a petition, go through a vote of the people, and it might not ever, anyway, so that's kind of where we stand. Anybody have any questions or thoughts or comments or?
I know you guys have put a lot of energy into this.
Not
I
a lot.
appreciate
It's
your time.
it is so simple, this budget. All we do is, a machine could do it. We just ask for the maximum amount of